Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining us again. I'm here with my friend
Vinzel.
I'm Dr. Dean, and chiropractor and physiotherapist. And today we're going to be discussing Article 37 and 38, which is from my Pain is Not the Only Problem blog and podcast. And the title of today is Game Day.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So we don't normally, like, I've got the camera going, but normally when we do a podcast, we don't have the visual part, right? We just record. But I feel like we can connect a little bit better when we're talking with each other if we can also talk, kind of pay attention to our audience as well. Okay, so game day, right?
Yeah.
What the heck is that? So now remember, normally we would not be, trying to be super perfectly the visual part, right? So we're going to read from the article. Okay, so about game day, the most important aspect on the first encounter of a low back pain. This is specifically for low back pain, but let's just leave out the low back pain part.
Okay.
The most important aspect on the first encounter, so we're talking about when the patient first meets the doctor, is to build the best possible relationship. The best relationship is best described as a respectful interaction with the entire patient, including their values and expectations on their terms. And this is termed the patient-doctor relationship. So normally we hear it the other way around, right? You've heard that before, doctor-patient relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that was the first most important thing, is to build the best possible relationship. The second most important aspect on the first encounter is what I call professional manners and professional procedures. The doctor, physician, clinician is expected to represent all medical professionals with an example of excellence, acting in a manner that exemplifies the pursuit of science and all human well-being, to never do harm. So you've heard that before from doctors, right? Like, first do no harm.
Part of your Hippocratic oath.
Right. So in my world, it's not first do no harm, it's never do harm. And I have mentioned that in several of my other podcasts about never do harm, which includes coercion, right? Like pointing the patient in a specific direction that fits the needs of the doctor.
Yeah.
And doesn't necessarily meet the needs of the patient, but for some reason the doctor might benefit because it's easy for the doctor, right? And so there's a lot of this. We could even say the doctor benefits because they make money. The doctor benefits because they've done it 100 times before, and it's sort of automatic pilot. It's easy for the doctor because they don't have to think that hard. It's easy for the doctor because they can move on to the next appointment, right? And they can like book really heavy. So the point of bringing this up is to compare what typically happens in that medical experience on the first encounter to what we're going to propose, which is super cool, which is, I mean, we made this up, is game day, right? Okay, so let's first talk about professional manners. Professional manners imply clinical reasoning instead of dogma or routine. The clinician is motivated by early and accurate complete diagnosis and complete treatment costs or success at low cost and with complete patient satisfaction. All right, so let's back up. The clinician is motivated by early and accurate complete diagnosis. Now you've got your personal experience and your family stories experience.
Yeah. That is not a true statement.
Right, diagnosing on the first visit? Like, so how does it go? It goes like, oh, let's get an x-ray, let's do some labs, let's send you for a surgical consult. Right? And you've heard me say that before. Yeah. That's like kicking the can. Right? Just delay. right? So without getting into the details of the game day yet, in your like automatic response, how would that compare, like that kicking the can, compare to creating a game strategy with your team? The kicking the can, like, let's do the strategy tomorrow.
So what I would say, comparative to game, that in particular would be like, okay, let's not work on this after practice. So say for instance, doing a proper cool down, making sure the team stretches, making sure we're proprioceptively cued for our action. So say if we're going over a flight of hurdles, and we're letting our arms come out and we're not being attentive to the detail of the mechanics. So and then you're like, okay, you ran faster, so we're just gonna go with that. You ran this one faster, even though the form was crappy. So you're looking at the time versus the actual movement of the shape of that movement pattern, which can be replicated if you do it correctly versus that one time, that one rep that was fast.
Oh, I get it. Right. So you're comparing diagnosing properly on the first visit to paying attention to more than just the one example of performance.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's different. I like that.
That's how I interpreted it, because going through the literature, I was like, if you're coming from a coach's perspective, how would that relate?
Right.
Yeah. So.
And so that's kind of what we're going to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to kind of compare. So, okay, so the secret's out. There's no surprise now. It's all right. So what we're going to do is we're going to compare the doctor's office as the doctor being the coach, actually, and the patient is on a team, but the patient's going to be on two teams. The patient is on the team of their own healthcare progress, and the patient is also going to be on a team with the doctor.
Yep.
Right? Yeah. So it's kind of happening at the same time. All right. That's good. I like that. Professional procedures imply clinical experience let me start over. Professional procedures imply a clinical experience that bestows reassurance upon the patient. The clinician offers the expected standard of care established by the industry, not by laziness, lateness, personal bias, financial gain, prioritized practice, or standardized practice, or ego. So what I'm trying to explain here with like professional procedures is, if you're a doctor with a strong practice, and the main thing you do is reassure your patient they're going to be fine, and you're using the expected standards of care established by the industry, then that's like, if you compare that to a coach, you wouldn't tell your team, well, there's a chance you're going to lose. Like, and we don't have to train that hard today. It's okay if we,
Yeah, going into that.
So the idea is that and then I'll just read it again. So the doctor, the clinician is not being lazy, late, acting on personal bias, financial gain. Can you imagine if the coach was doing that? If the coach was lazy, the coach is late, the coach cares about himself, the coach just cares about getting paid.
Coach is going to get fired.
Right. And the coach is like, oh, well, actually our practice is kind of all about me. Like, I just want to be like known as this amazing coach, right? So if you win, then I look good.
Yep.
But Denzel, that's the classic doctor's office. It's not about if I help my patients in this new great way, then they get better, and I just feel good about that. It's like, oh, well, I'm going to become this omnipotent, holier than thou, godlike doctor. Right? It's about escalating the doctor's ego. And I'm not saying, I'll take off my glasses. I'm not saying every time, but I have a lot of experience with doctors, being a patient myself. and I write this is from personal experience, and from the many, I mean, how many manys do you want me to use? Patients I've seen that tell me that they had the exact same experience. Oh, the doctor, you could just tell, he walked in the room and the first thing he did was look at his watch, and then he said hello, and then he looked up. In that order. Wow. Like, okay, how long is this going to take? So I would say, there's another order that could be. So what I'm doing here with this article, Game Day, is I'm trying to set the stage for what people know and what's usual. And then when we present, people will be like, oh, I get why you said what you said. The clinician appears accessible, introduces relevancy, offers empathy, comfort, and optimism on behalf of the patient. The patient feels welcomed and important. The clinician offers an entire experience for the entire patient. Trust is established easily. So, like, we haven't even introduced yet the Game Day, but let's talk about this. So instead of clinician, let's say the coach. The coach appears accessible, introduces relevancy, empathy, comfort, optimism, right, on behalf of the team. The team feels welcome and important. The coach offers an entire experience for the entire team. Trust is established easily. So you have coaches. What kind of experience do you have with a coach?
So a good experience or a bad experience?
Any, man. We are the portal for our audience. Okay. Right? They can make up their own mind.
I'll give you 2 examples. So I'll start with the bad example first. So I had a coach who would literally spend maybe 10 to 15 minutes with me initially, and then after this, so this is after the warm up. This is after getting primed and ready to move. And the coach would just have me go over flight after flight after flight after flight of hurdles, and would just tell me little things that, like, here and there, like to this is initially when I'm learning right. I changed my form and everything. I would just get pointers that, 1, I didn't really understand, and then 2, when I asked for like more clarification, it was like, get back on the line and get to it. So it was no type of, they didn't disseminate that information to me in an effective way. So granted, they can be one of the best hurdling coaches or hurdlers in the world. But if they can't give me that information to help me become even better than I was before, then that's a loss of communication, and that's where it failed on the coach's part.
Right.
So
before you go ahead, keep all that, okay. Right? I want to make a point about what you just said. So being a good hurdler doesn't automatically make you a great hurdle instructor, coach, right? And let's put that in medicine. You can be a doctor, but you don't get the human body.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah.
You don't. I mean, you could look at anything. We could look at low back pain, because that's sort of the topic. Not today's topic, but the topic in the article. And not even know what muscles are attached, where, and what they do, and what other hard tissue architecture, ligaments, tendons, where they are, what their names are, anything. But you're a doctor, but you don't know the backstory, right? So I'm going to wrap this up fast. Being a hurdling coach doesn't really require you to be a hurdler, but you have to respect it.
Yep.
Right? And so the reverse is true. if you're a great hurdler, you have to respect coaching. And that coaching means you have to be flexible in the different ways you teach. You have to mold and model and create new imaginative ways to reach each of the athletes in a personalized, unique way instead of just barking out orders. Yeah, go.
So continue with that. So as an athlete, I needed to do my part, which is ask for clarification. I did that. So, and that's something my late grandmother would always say: if you don't understand, ask for clarification.
Right, but it's Granny.
Yeah. Well, Granny wisdom is universal.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So with her taking that into account, I asked, and then when I was saying that 10 to 15 minutes, it's going through, the coaching. So I would say 10, 15 minutes worth of coaching, and then the rest is just getting through my repetitions. But that coaching aspect of that 10 to 15 minutes, because obviously we have a lot of athletes, and he's not only doing just hurdles, he's doing like sprints as well. But that split, if you're going to split that time, make sure it's quality. So if you're going to split between events and you took on that assignment because you chose to be the coach. So if you're going to choose to be the coach and you're going to lead men and women into something that can help take care of their families or get them a scholarship or something like that of that nature, you need to be just as attentive to the athlete that's sprinting, the athletes that's jumping or hurdling. So when I asked for clarification and I really didn't get it, and I just kind of instinctively just felt like, okay, from there I need to do my research. I need to see where. So I started to record myself or get someone to record me and then kind of help make adjustments on my own. And from there, a good experience that I had with a coach, which thank you, Dr. White. Shout out to Dr. White. He's one of the best hurdle coaches I ever had. He took me over to the grass, the turf, and before we even touched the hurdle, he changed the way I even approached running.
Do you remember what he said?
So
what he changed?
So specifically what he did was he took me to the turf and then he had me march. So I had to march and I had to make sure my foot was under my center of mass and I wasn't back kicking and I wasn't reaching, which means if I wasn't applying a braking force, or I wasn't shortening my stride length with a kickback. So you shorten your stride length when you kick back. So we did that. Then we did high knees in place. And then he would not let me move until he saw that it was golden. And once I got fatigued, then that's when he took me to, he called it the deep water. And then I start going out and I start going out even more. And then around 40 to 50, the 50-yard line, that's when we'll stop. 20 seconds, right back on it again. That taught me to make sure when I'm fatigued, I hold my form.
Yeah, and we've talked about that before, fatigue and failure.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So failure means the intended shape, movement pattern falls apart.
Mm-hmm.
Not that it's faulty, it just starts to fall apart. It's very well known.
Mm-hmm.
And then fatigue is just you ran out of gas.
Yeah.
Right? So you should always go to the point where you run out of gas eventually, but you need to continue to reset and reset and reset.
So I learned that shape.
Learn the shape,
So when I took that from there, when I got over and I got over the first hurdle, I kept the shape, kept my arms tight, kept everything compact, and then I got over the hurdle quicker. And one of the fastest races I ever ran, it felt effortless. I just remember the first hurdle, And the last hurdle, I don't even remember in between. I was just working. And I credit Dr. White for that, and he is one of the best coaches I ever had. So those are my two examples.
Yeah, thanks, Venzel. He has the greatest stories, honestly. And someday, he's not going to be a grandmother. He's not going to be a granny, but he's going to be an amazing grandfather. Yeah. I can guarantee you that. And he's going to have stories galore. Yeah. Thanks. And then finally, on the first encounter, the clinician makes a wholehearted promise to endure the course of care on behalf of the patient's well-being. The doctor will remain a robust, kind, and accessible relationship with the patient. So what I'm trying to set up here is that, again, the clinician becomes the coach. Mm-hmm. The coach represents that persistence to do well because, of course, the team wants victory.
Yep.
Right? In whatever way that is, even if it's, now you already mentioned this, and this is a statement of personal values. What if the victory is the scholarship?
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with playing the game itself or the sport itself. But what if this coach, if highly effective, creates a doorway for an athlete looking for a scholarship? Mm-hmm. Right? It's got nothing to do with getting over the hurdles the way the coach has in their head that it should be done, right? That sort of, that's what I'm talking about, like that dogma. So if we read this again, the clinician makes a wholehearted promise to endure the course of care on behalf of the patient's well-being. We could say the clinician now becomes the coach, makes a wholehearted promise to endure the training on behalf of the athlete and team. Mm-hmm. Wow. So why is it the doctors get away with just being jerks and being empty and being cold? Why do a coach can't get away with that? No. But, I could say, the doctor is supposed to be some elevated, educated, sort of contributor to society and health and wellness, mm-hmm. but doesn't even, I'll say it, doesn't even possess the basics of being able to support. Like, if you put a doctor in place of a coach, they would not know how to behave. And I'll look in the camera. You can see my mouth moving, right? I'm not talking about all of them. I'm talking about we're trying to be supportive, mm-hmm. and bring a message and elevate the experience that the patient has, or even I always say patient athlete. Mm-hmm. I hardly ever say patient. It's always patient / athlete. Mm-hmm. Right? And there's an athlete in everyone. Yeah. Doesn't matter if you...
we got industrial athletes, construction workers, people who work in... that have physically or mentally demanding jobs, like a teacher, or being able to keep that posture not slumped over because you're sitting a lot, or you're in a position where you're over a computer, making sure you keep proper posture so you don't have develop kyphosis.
Right. You could say drivers. You could say
exactly
people who work on our roads.
Definitely drivers. Like F1 race car drivers, NASCAR drivers. Those are athletes. Those are athletes. Those people are athletes.
Yeah, and I heard it's like 140 degrees inside the car. Like, wow.
Yeah, that's no joke.
Yeah. So the comment here is trying to, kind of break down what's known in the clinical world as the first encounter.
Yeah.
Because that's the first time that patient, athlete, and the clinician meet, right? Mm-hmm. So what I'm trying to say is, that's where the clinician needs to have their game dialed up, right? So that's why I started at the first encounter. I don't want to just create a concept and say, you know, doctors need to act more like coaches. I'm going to say when you first meet your patient, you need to have your game day on.
You need to be on your A game. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. The doctor will remain a robust, kind, and accessible relationship with the patient. The patient will experience advocacy, right? You could say the same thing about the coach. So the athlete will experience advocacy. So the coach is advocating for their team members, right? Knowing that their health is in good hands, right? So look, let's say I'm a coach. Hey, you know, we're not just going to win, but you're in good hands with me. I know what to look for. I know how to support you. I care about you. You know, I'm going to make sure this is an amazing ride.
Key too. It's not about just winning. It's creating the formula to winning. So getting a winning strategy so you can replicate it.
So he said strategy and I said diagnosis. Right? Yeah. So if you're listening or watching, you know, we're building the bridge. Now, I didn't plan on it going this way, but I think the more we break it down, right? So, you know, normally, if you listen to the other podcasts, I don't say all this out in front, but, you know, it gets to the point and there's sort of this aha moment where you're like, oh, I get it. Okay. So we're you know, we kind of ruined it for that. The clinician offers a personal guarantee and promise to deliver the expected results. Why do clinicians get away with saying, oh, so we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and whatever it is they're going to do. But hey, I'm not responsible if it doesn't work.
Yeah, hands off.
Right? And how many times do they prescribe something or recommend something or refer to something that they know damn well that there's nothing good going to come out of that?
Yeah.
I'm going to send you for an MRI. Why? Right? So I've got a little cranky back issue right now. Like my glutes are kind of, you know, numb. My hamstrings are kind of numb. And so they're telling me, he hands me this bag, this little kit. He's like, hey, you know, I need a fecal sample because we're going to test you for colon cancer. And I just wanted to punch him. I'm like, dude, I don't have colon cancer. My hamstrings are numb. Don't waste my time.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you get that.
Yeah.
Okay, so your bad example that you gave, right? How many times do you think, like, on a regular basis, a coach is going to give the team or their kids bad advice to do something that's absolutely pointless, that isn't going to make them faster, stronger, more aware, you know, get more, his favorite word, proprioception, right? More proprioceptively get keyed in, right? More aware and ready, right? So coaches can't get away with that.
Nope.
Right?
Not if they
because
want to keep a job.
Parents are watching, right? And the kids know better because they talk amongst themselves.
Yeah.
And the kids are like, this is so dumb. Why are we doing this?
You'll know a bad coach really quickly. Yeah.
Right? And it's easy to spot. And so is a bad doctor. But for some reason, we're not allowed to tell the doctor, you know what? And I did this before. I was like, dude, you're 40 minutes late. I've been sitting in this exam room for 40 minutes. That's not okay. You can write me a check for my rate for 40 minutes. Right? This is not okay. I have things to do. But why do doctors get away with that? Why do they get away with booking 35 people in 1 hour?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
So, you know, this is Article 37 and 38. So I've been really nice all the way along. But it's time. Right? It's time.
Yeah.
Right? So, what I'm saying is, let me put my glasses back on. So, robust and kind. The clinician offers a personal guarantee and promise. I know I've been coached before. Mm-hmm. My coach says we're going to win. We're going to train. We're going to train hard. I don't know if they use that anymore, right? But we're going to train hard, and we're going to do this. My coaches were never like, hey, we're going to lose. This is never going to happen. All right.
Second place. That's what we want.
Second place. That's right. Hey, you want the scholarship? Not going to happen. Okay. So here's the breakaway. Here's where we get into the game day. Mm-hmm. Game day describes a vision for a promise of real care. Game day establishes the highest possible standard of care for a profession that seeks to gain the confidence of the public. Mm-hmm. Right? So the medical model, we say Western medicine or whatever it is you want to call it, does not have the confidence of the public, of the people that it serves. So you can call the system broken. I call it, in my language, I call it crooked. Mm-hmm. Or you could say the healthcare system is broken. I say, well, healthcare system is crooked because it's all about profits.
Yeah. It
isn't really about health or care. I mean, it's been a minute, right? And we still, my primary care doctor doesn't have the faintest idea how to examine me in any way whatsoever. And I've said this before, didn't even ask me to lift up the back of my shirt to see if there's a knife sticking out of my back. Didn't examine, and this is the fourth primary care that's, around. It's around and around and around, right? Praying each time I'm going to get something worthwhile. Doesn't know how to treat low back pain. But check this out, Venzel. 90% of people who go to a doctor are going for back pain.
Wow. And they can't even treat it.
And they don't have the faintest idea how to treat it. Now, I'm going to just put a little gold star. I don't mean chiropractors. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I don't have much experience with osteopath, but I'm going to put them in there because they're, musculoskeletal. Mm-hmm. And I'm not just pushing chiropractic in a, that crack. It's like that magic crack. That doesn't do anything. Sorry. But anyway, why isn't the doctor held accountable? Okay, so you've had work done on your car, right?
Yeah.
Right. So can you go? Let's say you take your car. It's brakes don't work. Something wrong with my brakes. So take the car in. They're like, yeah, we can fix that. Well, the comparison would actually be if we're making a comparison to the clinical model. First, they would say, oh, we have no idea how to fix that, but we'll tinker around with it. Right. But let's say you get a really good mechanic or good doctor and they're like, yeah, I can fix that. Mm-hmm. Okay. What's it going to cost? Well, let me give you an estimate. Mm-hmm. Right? That's the mechanic.
Yep.
Why can't we ask the doctor for that? What's it going to...
True.
They don't have the faintest idea. What do you mean you don't have any idea? Are we talking hundreds or thousands of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars? What are we talking about? I don't have any idea. Why? If you come to see me in my office, mm-hmm. I can tell you exactly how much it's going to cost within $30. And it's going to be first encounter low back pain under $300 ish. Mm-hmm. It's not fixed price, but it's also not by the hour. What I'm saying is, okay, so the example is the brakes don't work, right? So they're fixed and they still don't work.
You get fixed.
You get to take it back and say, hey, the brakes aren't fixed. Okay. Let me just take a look at that and I'm going to do right by you. Mm-hmm. right? I know what I'm doing. I must have screwed something up. Why can't you get your money back after, and I have a patient who's had $800,000 of back surgery, 3 back surgeries, and he comes to me, I meet him for the first time, and he still has back pain. Why can't he get his money back? Yeah. Why can you get your money back for a break job, but you can't get your money back when some nice surgeon, intending well, I'm using all the wrong words. It's like, oh, the first one didn't work because we needed to do the second one. Oh, so what was the first one about? No accountability whatsoever.
Yeah.
Why can't he get his money back? That's almost $1 million.
Yeah.
Right? So that's bad doctoring.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what if you have a lousy coach? Lousy. How long is a lousy coach going to...
Not long.
And then what's going to happen?
They're going to replace them with a coach they believe works.
So why can't the patient say the same thing? You know what? I need to replace you. I want number one, right? You can see early. So what we need to do then is we need to empower the patient to know what to look for.
Yeah.
Right? Now, let's say your kid wants to play soccer, and there are a couple of coaches to choose from.
Mm-hmm.
You're the parent, right? So you go and you kind of hang out and see what, right? Because some coaches just scream at the kids and tell them what they're doing wrong.
Get on the line.
Right? Or just scream at them. And then there's, other ones that are a little more gentle, that have a different kind of a message.
Mm-hmm.
So why can't we do that with doctoring? Right? So you meet a doctor, you're not stuck with that doctor. Well, it was assigned. He's the doc. I shouldn't say he. Your clinician has seen you before, and so you stay with that doctor. You don't think that you can move around. Like I just said, I'm on my 4th one.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So he doesn't know a stick about the human body, but he's a really, really nice, super sensitive, super accountable guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, I already know you know more about the body and how it works than I do. I'm just going to say that. That's okay. So tell me how it works. Right? So I'm a chiropractor. I'm limited. What I can, I can't self-prescribe. I can't order my own MRI. So I say, look, this is what I need. He's like, okay, well, in your plan, I'm going to have to hunt around, see how I can make that happen. But, that wouldn't occur to me to do that. So he's learning.
Yeah. And he removed something that a lot of doctors and a lot of professionals suffer from, and that's ego.
Right. Yeah. So he's actually only been in practice like 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, he's just a good person.
Yeah, that's
like right from the beginning.
Mm-hmm. That shows too, for somebody to admit that they don't know something, that takes a lot of humility. And when you have humility, that allows you to learn.
Right.
When you learn, you can apply that to if you have another encounter. Say if someone is suffering from something similar, because they went through that, they humbled themselves to learn. Now they can help countless many other individuals. So
yeah. So to Wenzel's point, that's called clinical prevalence.
Mm-hmm.
So if a clinician sees the same kind of thing over and over, they sort of they don't necessarily become better at diagnosing or prescribing a course of care. But what happens is they become, they start to understand what that is a little bit better because it's happening all of the time.
Yeah.
And so if they do choose like to do their own research like I did or whatever, then look at then they can realize how many people they can help.
Yeah.
And so I think the same thing is true in coaching. If you have a coach and they see what kind of verbal cues or tactile cues that they give that tend to work with most of their athletes, they're going to hang on to that.
Yep.
But they aren't going to just keep barking out the same thing. If the athletes are all just looking at each other like, what does that mean? I don't know what that means.
Get it? No. Yeah, that's not going to work. You're going to have to make sure you're going to have that what I would say, that it's adaptability. You have to have adaptability.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so now let's get back to this. So Game Day describes a vision for a promise of real care. Game Day establishes the highest possible standard of care for a profession that seeks to gain the confidence of the public. So we could say the confidence of the athletes or, the team, right? So there has to be that co-creation that's got an endless circle of support. So this is where, you get to hear my badness. The failed model known as healthcare is a for-greed business model that stigmatizes an already crumbling for-profit corporate hubris that serves only shareholders. Wellness is never achieved since the insurers manage covered types of care, leaving clinical experience and expertise for dead. Instead of calling the health system broken, let's call it crooked. So I brought that up. Okay, so the Game Day approach attempts to identify patients through the lens of lifestyle contribution and lifestyle modification, when the clinician's prescription is lifestyle change and body use modification. Offerings like addictive drugs, invasive surgery, and risky injections fade, and the cost associated with them fade. It costs nothing to the patient nor the clinician to identify faulty motor patterns or give advice for lifestyle change or to provide optimism and motivation. So, since it doesn't cost anything to the doctor to be offering optimism, motivation, assurance, why doesn't it happen?
Well, that's based on the clinician and how they view their practice.
Right.
So if you don't,
is that the kind of coach you think is going to work?
No.
Yeah. Okay, the Game Day approach works exactly like sports performance. Give your due diligence, train for results, be optimistic, be a team player, and listen to your coach. So let's play the reverse game. The Game Day approach works exactly like medicine. The doctor gives due diligence, provides a course of care for results, is optimistic, and is a team player. Why doesn't that happen? It could. A visit to the doctor's office is no different than an athlete seeking guidance from their coach. Clinicians are coaches, so we've been saying that. So are doctors and physicians coaches with guidance and optimism with solutions. Coaches don't want to be behind a losing team. If your patients are not 100% satisfied, then you are coaching a losing team. Athletes don't want to wait for results. They want to get back into the game today. We've said that.
Yeah.
So,
countless
right?
times.
Today. Clinicians should be using same-day solutions, not delaying diagnosis and floundering in their own confusion. Confused coaches are losing coaches. Confused doctors are losing doctors.
Yep.
The Game Day approach assumes that the patient has a functional disability related to how they use their body at work, at home, disabilities, hobbies, right? Mm-hmm. So what we're saying is the Game Day approach is not about diabetes, particularly or fractured bone, right? We're talking about the predominance of why people go to a doctor for pain, for body pain, say low back pain. It's because of how they use their body.
Yeah. Clearly,
right? So if you go to a doctor and a doctor doesn't know how the body works in motion, you're going to the wrong coach. Is what I'm saying. So I'm not saying don't go to the doctor. I'm saying doctors should learn how to be coaches.
Yep.
If they want. Patients' habits, biases, and preferences will expose their desire to resolve their complaint. Social, economic, cultural, and emotional contributions are easily related to the complaint. Multi-system examination and workups expose pain generators. Differential diagnosis explains possible somatic, or somatic we mean muscle, mechanisms and functional limitations. The report of findings proposes clinical evidence in the course of care. So that's basically what we're talking about is, the first part of the article is breaking down, the concept. And the concept is relating how coaches are more passionate to medical model, which can be kind of cold. If you ask 10 people, they would say, I think 10 out of 10 would probably say doctors are cold. Mm-hmm. I mean, you might get 9 colds and 1 warm, but you're not going to get a hot.
Nope. Not at all.
Okay, so this is Article 38 now. So now we're gonna kind of land this in I think a really great comparison between the two. So we're not about complaining, we're about solutions. So the game day concept, this is game day plan. This is the plan. The game day approach evolved from the performance-based determination of athletes to get results in a competitive platform. It also evolved from my inspiration to create an alternative platform for the current healthcare system that does not provide an efficient or effective conservative treatment plan for clinically common low back pain predominantly, but we could say any musculoskeletal. If winning at the game of satisfactory pain solution outcomes is the play, clinicians are running, right? That's the play is to be effective.
Yeah.
Right? Patients will never become champions. If clinicians are just keep doing the things that they're doing, their solutions are not effective, right, or efficient, that we're going to call that a play, right? Instead of like a course of care or diagnosis. Patients can't become champions. They're not going to win, right?
And that doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results is what? Insanity. So
right.
Why would you keep doing it if you know it doesn't work?
It's right. And also you're going to wear your athletes out if they're just doing the same thing over and over and it's not taking them forward, right? Positive adaptation or advanced musculoskeletal proprioceptive awareness, right? So the rules have to change. Clinically meaningful results implies a treatment plan that provides biomechanically improved outcomes and patient satisfaction reflected through patient values and expectations. Clinically meaningful is similar to strategically meaningful, right? Team coaches do not get superior performance from their team unless there's a game plan and the entire team understands this plan, supports the plan, and implements the plan. So here we have that another breakdown in the clinical office, right? So patient comes in, right? So we can say that the coach is the clinician, right? So the clinician is not explaining their game plan so that the patient doesn't understand it, right? And the clinician doesn't even really support it because they don't even know what they're doing to begin with.
Yeah.
Right? So nobody knows what's going on.
Which was dealing with that breakdown. You remember that analogy that I used with it wasn't an analogy, it was a true story. But that example that I used about the bad coach, I was not getting proper dissemination of that information to me. So now
you can't be on board.
Yeah, like I didn't feel like I started to tune him out. So now the coach's words now are becoming less valuable to me because I'm seeing that there's a disconnect. So something else that some wisdom from my grandmother through my uncle, I started to lose affinity towards my coach So I started to like, okay, I don't started to lose not just affinity but some respect, because I was like, do you not see that I'm not getting this? Like, what's going on? Like, so now I'm harboring like negative emotions toward my coach when somebody I should be getting positive affirmation and corrective movements from. So yeah.
And I would say that by and large, most athletes do get the goodness.
Yeah,
They get the affinity. I would say for sure. So then the example here is the doctor and the patient are in the room together, and the doctor's doing their thing. They're like, oh, I need to help this patient get better, or get them out of pain, but they don't really know what's going on, or they don't really know. They're like, oh, I'll just give them pain pills or something, right?
Yeah.
It's just right. But the problem isn't that the patient is out of pills. The problem is that the patient has a faulty movement pattern, or they have. Let's just make it more relatable. Let's just say they're doing something in their day kind of over and over, and it's contributing to the body's kind of is confused. Like what? So you're walking a weird way, or you're holding your shoulders a weird way, or you're slumped over a weird way, right? And the body's like, it's just not right, but it never gets fixed, right? And so this isn't always like, we're not talking about like falling and hitting your knee.
Yeah. A traumatic injury, no.
Right. So then there's this breakdown because it's like the patient doesn't know what's going on, so they're in the dark, and the doctor's in the dark, and the doctor, like I gave an example of my doctor. So everybody's in the dark, so there's no plan. So nobody has any ideas there's no timeline. There are no promises. There's no, the doctor can't even explain what's wrong, but already there's a treatment plan that's starting to evolve, or they just ship them out for imaging and labs, right? Praying that something is going to come back that they can point their pencil eraser at and be like, oh, it's that, right? But it's like, just because you can find something doesn't mean it's it. So, right? Correlation is not causation. So what's the cause? So we're talking about is that fog. That fog doesn't work in athletics. There can't be any sort of disconnect or fog whatsoever. So if the clinician is using plays that don't work, patients are being pointed in the wrong direction and they can't win. So why is it okay I'm going to say, why is it okay that this happens? But I'm going to also say, why is it okay as a patient? Why do you put up with that? What are you thinking? Call the doctor. Say, hey, whoa. You know what? You don't seem to know what you're doing. If you're just offering me pain pills and you can't describe what's wrong with me, and you're not going to say, oh, you have sciatica, right? That's not a diagnosis. So framing my diagnosis into the human body is not diagnosing. Trying to place the symptoms into a problem in the body is not diagnosing. Diagnosing is explaining what's happening in the body to cause these symptoms, but be able to understand also and explain what the problem is and what it's causing that then causes the symptoms.
Gotcha.
So the layer in between is being able to, in a musculoskeletal, immune, chemical way, inflammatory process, all the things that are in the phases of healing, right? You can look at any of those things, phases of healing, articles 34 and 35, or podcast 34, 35. That's what needs to be described.
Yeah.
Not, oh, well, you have pain, so, and it's in the back of your leg, you have sciatica. Okay, but where in the phases of healing am I? What phase, how healed am I, even though I have pain? That's okay, so I have sciatica. Where is my sciatica in those phases of healing? Where can I expect it to be healed? when's the problem going to be healed? Then I won't have the symptoms.
Yeah.
So it's backwards to say, oh, well, patient says I have pain. Okay, so your doctor can't say, oh, your diagnosis is pain, because why would your doctor has to tell you something new?
Yeah, because you know that.
You already know that, right?
Yeah.
So then if it's in the back of the leg, it's just really easy to say, oh, well, you have sciatica, right? And the patient's like, ooh, fancy word. What's that? Well, it's actually not a real diagnosis anymore, right? So it's, say, sciatic syndrome. Mm-hmm. But then you have to be able to tell the patient why they have this sciatic syndrome.
Yeah.
Where'd that come from? Specifically. Not in general, why does this, because you're sitting down all day, so that causes sciatica. Mm-hmm. Okay, well then how do you explain people who don't sit down that have this distribution of symptoms?
Yeah.
Right? Then now you got a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then what about people who have sciatica but don't have pain in the back of the leg, which is also possible?
Mm-hmm.
Because sciatic syndrome describes a state. It
Yeah.
doesn't describe, or condition, it doesn't describe the symptoms related to it. So relate that into coaching.
Mm-hmm.
So the athlete says, when I run down the field and I make that cut, right, I get pain in my knee. Okay, well, I'm going to put some ice on that, right, for 20 minutes, and then we're going to try that cut again.
One, you should not do it. You should stop, because if you put ice on it, now you make the tissue tense. Now you try to make a cut without warming it up properly.
But the point of this type of a coach, we're going to call it the doctor,
Yeah.
right, clinician,
Mm-hmm.
this type of a coach is like, oh, well, we need to make your knee pain go away. We're not going to pay attention to the fact that when you cut, your knee alignment is way off,
Mm-hmm.
your foot's pronated,
Yep.
and you're not looking in the direction of your turn before you make the turn.
Yeah.
You're turning your torso, and your gaze is following the turn of the torso. So you're not first turning and capturing a horizon line,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then turning and then localizing in that horizon line. So what's the pelvis doing now? Right? So all of that is by describing that. Well, why do you have that habit? Why do you have that pattern? Because you don't understand core neutral. Right? So the athlete, so instead of sending them for ice on that knee, that coach needs to say, okay, everybody, let's come back. And we're going to do core neutral drills for 10 minutes. And then we're going to practice the cut. And I'm going to have a laser eye. I'm going to make sure that you're turning your head first. You're going to tell me that for sure you can say yes, or you can raise your hand, whatever, that you captured a horizon line. Yeah, I got it. I didn't get it, right? Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to watch how you frame your turn, and I want you to tell me if you think you did it right or not. Now that's medicine.
Yeah.
That's doctoring. That's also coaching.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm saying is those layers between the diagnosis of the injury
Yeah.
and the symptoms, there are layers in between that are missing. What is the problem causing the symptom, and what is happening that's causing the problem? The problem isn't the problem. Something that's happening, that's the way the patient's moving or athlete's moving, is causing the problem that's causing the symptoms.
Yeah.
So medicine is missing. If there are 4 steps, right? Mm-hmm. There are 4 layers: the diagnosis, understanding what's causing the problem itself, and the symptoms, right? Medicine's missing 50% mm-hmm. of the situation with the patient.
Yeah.
Because they're missing the middle 2 phases. 50%. Okay. Now, if you allow your coaching to bail out on 50% of understanding how your team moves, because all athletics is movement.
Yeah.
It's every possible movement you can think of. And then you add a baseball bat, or you add a glove, or you add, swimming trunks, or you add
Shoulder pads.
It's endless, right?
Yeah.
You get into that sport.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what this game day concept is. So that's the direction that we're going into. Is useless to provide a surgical intervention on a disc herniation simply because it is seen on MRI if there is no surgeon's promise for full recovery and return to premium performance. Removal of the observed herniation is not the expectation of the athlete. Right, so that's patient value. So you have an athlete with a herniated disc, and the surgeon removes the disc. That doesn't meet. So what are the values of the athlete are hastening return to play.
Yep.
How can I get back into play and training as quickly as possible? So the surgeon's like, oh, you have a disc herniation. Okay, so I'm going to say, okay, well, then let's train today. Okay. It's not causing your pain. So we're just going to assume it's not, because I'm just going to say it's not. Mm-hmm. That's all. There's 43 articles, 43 podcasts you can listen to in the series. That's all about sorry. So I'm saying is, if you're going to mix a clinician or a doctor and an athlete together, that doctor, that clinician better damn well understand athletics. Because the value of the athlete is to get back into play, not to remove the disc herniation. So now you're talking about 6 to 8 months off, plus now there's scar.
Yeah.
Athletes don't want that. They want to go back into play today. Okay, so just for the record, come see me. I do it all day long.
Yep.
And just FYI, if you haven't listened to anything else about me, I have 5 disc herniations, lumbar disc herniations, and I've had them for over 20 years. And I can kind of do anything, really. Now I do have back pain from time to time, but it's not because of that. Mm-hmm. So that's the point there. Hastening our return to play is the expectation to be achieved. Surgery will always delay return to play and is never at low cost. So that breaks 2 of our rules. Back into play today and low cost.
Yep.
Both of those. So okay. All right. I think, okay, so let's flip the page and go to the game day is about clinical conservatism. Okay. So I'm going to read the doctor part, and then Vinzel's going to read the game day athlete coach part. So I'm going to read the first. So it's broken. So game day is about clinical conservatism. So this is about doctoring, clinical doctoring. So we're talking about no needles, no surgery, no drugs.
Yep.
Okay. So first, it's broken down into 9 parts. First, primum non nocere, never do harm. First, do no harm. So what we're talking about is no side effects, no risk, and 100% provider promise. Number 2, minimum intervention. Provide comprehensive patient education and accountability. So we're talking about the conservative doctor now, right? We're not talking about the medical model. Number 3, reduce patient risk. Self-evaluation to change lifestyle choices and behaviors to get results. Number 4, least side effects. So let's make a note here. And this is the CDC. 668 deaths per day due to medical error.
Wow.
Okay, and the conservative doctor, like chiropractic, deaths per day is 0. So which kind of doctor do you want to go to? Number 5, patient explains self-identified contributors, so they understand the problems and their setbacks, right? Mm-hmm. So in the conservative doctoring model, the patient is able to explain what they are involved in. Hey, I think I'm doing this wrong, or here's my lifestyle. My common example is I had a patient one time who was a mail sorter, and she just had this horrible pain, hand pain. And I said, she's like, yeah, I need to quit my job. Right? So that's what I'm talking about there. Patient explains self-identified contributions, and they become aware. So you help the patient, in the conservative model, you help the patient understand what's going on and what the contributors are, and they become involved in that process. And then these become therapy pointers, right? Number 6, least invasive interventions to minimize scarring, risk, impediments, and of course, death. Number 7, individualized care. We talked about that, like individualized coaching, to address the patient-athlete specific case management. Number 8, patient accountability to comply and participate as the primary caregiver. So the patient becomes our doctor.
Yeah.
And they're 90% responsible for their wellness and their recovery.
Yep.
And the doctor's the coach, it's 10%. Right? So the coach can say, hey, I want you to run this drill, but then, ultimately the athlete has to run the drill. Right? So saying to the doctor, you're 100% responsible for healing my injured ankle. No. I'm 10%. I'm going to tell you what to do, but you have to run that drill.
Yeah.
Right? And then 9, lowest possible cost and treating the least amount of time. So that's not the medical model. That's my conservative proposal.
Yeah.
That's how I run my office. Right? So then we're going to dial it up even into another level of awareness. And now we're going to say Vincel's is going to present this game day concept as an improvement to the medical model.
Yeah.
Right? So we're going to relate how athletics can be phrased as medicine. Okay?
Exactly.
I'm going to make a statement, and then you're going to read the game day plan, the concept on each one. Okay, so number 1, in doctoring, you must never do harm.
And do no harm to your teammates or team values.
Minimum intervention, provide education and accountability. So in common Western medicine, the medical model, there's no patient education and there's no patient accountability whatsoever.
Yeah.
So what would the game day version of that sound like? Number 2.
Discovering winning plays early.
Right. So do you want to wait for a winning play or do you want it now?
You want to be proactive instead of reactive.
Right?
Yeah.
So the medical model is not proactive. It doesn't provide patient education, and there's no proactive medicine happening whatsoever.
Yeah.
Right? So I would say the game day solution relatively is a huge improvement.
Yeah.
Number 3, patient risk. So what we're talking about is taking drugs that might be addictive. We're talking about surgeries. We're talking about injections, needles, possible infections, right? The wrong limb being removed, right? All of that, right? So we're talking about patient risk. So what's the game day solution for patient risk?
That is to reduce negativity and distraction, embody a victorious lifestyle.
Instead of risk, we're going to reduce negativity and distraction. We're going to stay focused.
Yep.
So I'm going to say that any type of offering by a doctor that is risky is a distracted referral or a distracted prescription because it's not true and real.
Yep.
It's a substitution. In the medical model, they're not concerned with least side effects. Epidural, for example, has the side effect of death.
Yeah.
How many people are willing to go into an athletic endeavor or into a sport, let's say like skydiving or jumping off of a cliff into the ocean when you don't even know what's down there, right? So that has the risk of death.
Yeah.
Right? That has high risk, but that's, for very few people.
Yeah.
What would the game day solution to least side effects sound like?
That would be least lost time due to injury and setbacks.
Right. So wouldn't you say in athletics, you want to reduce injuries, you want to reduce setbacks?
Yeah.
So why in the medical world are we not trying to reduce risk and setbacks or injuries?
Only that comes to specific clinicians that are really motivated and are very empathetic to their patient outcomes.
Okay, number 5. So in the conservative model, patients explain self-identified contributors, right? They have an understanding of what they're doing wrong. So in the medical model, the doctor never asks, well, why do you think you have pain? What do you think you're doing to cause this problem? It's not even asked.
No.
And I have no idea why. The patient awareness. So what would the game day solution be?
Teammates support each other. Coaches provide training and wisdom.
So there's an open conversation between the teammates themselves and between the teammates and the coach, right? So what we're talking about is that open conversation that doesn't exist in medicine. We need to add that back, right? So what soccer team or football team or pick any team would you say that you know of or could work if the teammates never spoke to each other and never spoke to the coach?
Not going to be a very successful team.
Imagine a team where you've got a coach that talks only to the teammates and the teammates don't get to talk or ask back or get any clarification back to the coach. But that's Western medicine.
Yeah.
Western medicine is the doctor talks and the patient sits and listens. The patient doesn't get to ask any questions, doesn't get to hold the doctor accountable. Well, why are you prescribing epidural?
Yeah.
You know, I'm understanding that epidural has a patient satisfaction rate of 0% at 12 months and has a risk of death. So why are you prescribing that? Look, it's all I have. I don't have anything else. You said you don't want pills. All I've got is epidural. And that's it. And even there's no even do you know what's in that? Do you know how that works? Okay, so let's move on. 6. Least invasive interventions to minimize scarring, risk, impediments, and such. So that's the conservative doctor. And then so the game day solution is
train for best performance with least risk to team values.
Then now we're talking about risk again, right? So in the medical model, risk is, never explained to the patient ever, right? Or even risk of addiction, or even, hey, I have to give you hydrocodone, or I've got to give you Lyrica or something, right? I have to give you something because you're in too much pain. Yeah. But then there's no discussion about addiction. So that's a problem. And then I want to point out that train for best performance with least risk to team values, not to the team, but their values. Yeah. Okay, and then number 7, individualized care to address patient-athlete specific case management. We're talking about tailoring. Conservative medicine typically tailors the treatment to the patient. Yep. So what's the game day for that?
Teammates recognize individual athlete values to be exploited for team gains.
So what we're looking at here in the Western medicine is the patient's values are never even discussed. So the doctor isn't even aware that, hey, maybe the patient has a skill set or an idea of something that they might be able to do or whatever, but the doctor doesn't ask the patient, hey, what are your ideas about this? And the patient's like, look, you just prescribed me drugs. I'm happy to do a workout. I could do that. You need me to walk 30 minutes every day when I wake up? I'll do that. If you think that's going to help my back pain, right? But the doctor doesn't even ask.
Yeah.
The doctor needs to get involved with, say, the teammates with the patient. We're almost done here. Number 8, patient accountability to comply with and participate as their own doctor, right? So what's the game day solution here?
Athletes owe their value to the team.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
Honestly, I can't believe I wrote that. But it just embodies the beauty of athletics, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So the medical model version of this is there's no patient accountability whatsoever. You just throw needles and surgery, scalpels and pills at the patient. Just throw it at them and see if it works, right? And I've got a great video I created where I just have all those things and I just throw them with my hand in slow motion, but not at a person. Okay, and then the last one is lowest possible cost, treating in the least amount of time. Now, this is going to be the crowning glory of this talk. And the game day solution is
least setbacks, the least injury, and the most gains.
Is there something missing from that?
That's perfect.
It's so perfect. Okay, so medical model, I don't want to break our bliss.
Yeah.
But medical model, do they care about setbacks? Do they care about how long it takes for you to get better? Absolutely not.
As long as they can bill for it.
Do they care if the surgery ends up making you worse than the original problem, or if you become addicted? Addiction's an injury.
That's a you problem when it comes to that. We prescribe, but it's on you.
And then it's a hands off, right? And then most gains. What doctor cares? One molecule, if you get better, do they lose sleep?
No.
Does a coach lose sleep if their team isn't winning?
Yes.
Do the athletes
Yes.
lose sleep
Yes.
if they know that they are not getting the gains that they're
need.
about their own values, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's it. The idea here is that we're relating the medical model and the conservative version, which is what I practice in my office, that's leans into this game day concept.
Yeah.
My conservative model isn't another doctor's office conservative model. My conservative model evolved around this game day concept. And I present it because I want to create some sort of relevancy, make it relatable to the patient, but also to the doctors. Because, lots of doctors get what's coaching. They have kids, or maybe they don't have kids, or athlete themselves. Maybe they don't, but they understand that the world of coaching and athletics has that emotionality and commitment.
Yeah.
Again, another amazing
podcast.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you again for joining us. I really enjoyed what you had to say, because it's
Appreciate it.
Vanzel's is I'm going to say is he's a sensitive, super aware guy, but
thank you.
He gets that essence of the patient and their values, and especially with athletics. It has a softness to it, right? It has that. What's the word that you used before?
Attentiveness.
Yeah. He has that attentiveness that I just really enjoy. Thank you again, and we'll see you guys next time.
Have a good one.